By the end of this week, we will have had 10 years of pretty continuous effort. We will have had 47 gatherings. We will have had 159 presentations, and by way over 300 people. We stopped counting after that. Oftentimes presentations are being done by one person, but several people are part of a paper or something. We've also had several people that have spoken several times to our group. In addition, we've also successfully carried out several special projects, and I'll tell you about them tonight. We started in 2004, and we had a visiting scientist brought here at the invitation of Dr. Roger Goodwill, a colleague of his at Brigham Young University named Phil Bruner. Phil had been, and is still doing, migratory bird research work, focusing particularly on this little bird. And this is called the Pacific Golden Plover. And Roger and I had been colleagues at Northern Mariners College many, many years before that, and we were looking for projects to kind of collaborate on. And so when Phil came out, Phil took a look at our bird population, and we started a major effort to try to compare the populations from Saipan and Hawaii. And Phil had been doing work along with his other colleagues in Hawaii for many years before that. In 2005, we had an event happen that was also important for us. We had a very large baleen whale wash ashore on the coast of Tinian, and some colleagues of mine, when I was teaching at the college, got together in a community organization effort to go and flens off all the tissues off of the whale and collect the skeleton. And in April 2005, Dr. Walter Johnson, or Wally Johnson, came out to continue to look at the birds population and actually capture some birds and start to put some transmitters on the birds and collecting some early level data about our bird population. It's Wally and his team. The net in the bottom right is a specially designed net to capture plovers. It's not the usual bird capture net. It's designed to capture the bird with kind of a soft capture in such a way it doesn't hurt the bird, so that when you let the bird go, it won't be harmed and it will be able to carry your transmitters with it. It's a different kind of mist net. But it's also visible. And the bird has extremely good eyesight, 90 times better than human eyesight. And so you can only catch it at one particular time in the early morning dawn when the bird is flying back to its territory. I gotta do some. I have a computer that wants to remind me I gotta keep buying software, but I don't buy it. So going back a second, the early morning catching of the bird was really important. You had to get there very early in the morning, once the dawn came up, the birds could see the net. And they're extremely sharp. And so you have to catch them when the bird can't see the net, and it's going back to the territory and then flies into it. And you put the bands on the birds and anything else you're gathering data-wise from them. And in 2005, we also started to have an organization. The first organization was the Western Pacific Academy of Science, Education, and Environmental Management. Changed later. But that year, we started our first conference. We went for 2 days, and I can't remember the number of speakers that we had at that conference. But after the conference, we held a group meeting to get ourselves organized, try to figure out what we really want to try to do. We established some goals, we elected officers, and we got the assurance from Roger that he was going to continue to serve as an advisor for us. We want it to be a truly science organization, not advocacy. As Mike said, a lot of organizations are built around advocacy, and we want to be advocacy neutral. We also want to support science education and environmental management programs here. We want to have a website. And we want to be a U.S. tax-exempt 501c3 nonprofit organization in order to be able to legitimately handle donations and grants and contracts. And we want to we also impose some fees on ourselves. So when Mike's saying please join APASEEM. What he's really saying is, please help pay your fees here. And we went into the next year, 2006. Dr. Peter van Boekering from the Netherlands was doing an economic valuation of the cenomized coral reefs and shared his findings in the multi-millions of dollars worth about how valuable our coral reefs were. 2006, Roger came back, and he was surprised when we had a talk scheduled for a young lady who was working on her PhD, but she canceled. She was ill at the time, and I think she got stuck in Guam, and we turned to Roger and we said, Roger, what are you going to talk about? And suddenly Roger had to come up with a project topic real quick, and he talked again about plovers. And he had just come from a conference in which the plover was identified as an animal to study that was common throughout the Pacific Islands, that was a potential carrier of avian influenza. And so Roger talked about that effort. We held an annual conference again, this time counting the speakers. So 3 on one day, 4 on another. And then again, after the conference, we held another meeting. And Roger was there for our meeting, and we're talking along with another scientist, Dr. Gary Denton. And trying to figure out what we're going to do, where we're going to go. Gary is a gentleman who is part of the WERI program in Guam, the Water and Environment Research Institute. And Gary agreed to not be an officer, but he would help the same kind of way Roger was in terms of being an advisor for a group, and continued to do that to this day. He'll be speaking during the conference as well. He's done several times. 2007, the entire year went by, we had absolutely no talks, but it was an important year. A lot of things happened that year, but we didn't hold any talks. We lost a lot of officers too. In 2008, David Schofield, who is the Pacific Region Stranding Coordinator for Marine Mammals, came to Saipan and held a conference, and we sponsored that talk here. It was the first time we actually held a talk here at American Memorial Park. All prior talks were held at room D1 at Northern Mariners College. David on the left, he's done several different kinds of activities out here. He's the Pacific Region Stranding Coordinator, and I'll get to him again later. Dr. Jennifer McKinnon, at that time, was again working on her PhD, and she was out here for another topic. She was doing an orientation session on how community volunteers can help with archaeology. At that time, we were attempting to develop a marine environmental science center at Pow Pow Beach. And we did. We had a lot of community organization activities, and we did a lot of good archaeology. We just didn't build the center. Both David and Jennifer's talks were very, they were supporting to us to say, let's get ourselves organized again. And somehow the other officers got together and changed the name of the group. So now we're called APASEEM, or the Asia Pacific Academy of Science, Education, and Environmental Management. And we had new officers elected, and again we sought to try to get ourselves well organized. With the new venue here at American Memorial Park, with the very cooperative park staff, we dedicate ourselves to get back on track and to have a successful conference that November, which we did. In 2009, we had a special activity. One of our officers was a woman who had worked as a science teacher on Tinian and wanted to hold a summer camp on Tinian, and got our group to help organize it. So we organized 14 speakers for 24 hours a day. My colleague Andre served as the camp assistant director here. Andre is standing next to me, and the program was extremely successful. Conference that following year again, 2010. Charlie Potter, the lead cetacean skeletal curator at the Smithsonian, talked about how we should get scientific information from whale strandings. And we couldn't get the park at that time, but we ended up doing an emergency venue at the CRM office. There's Charlie, and there's him instructing on how to deal with whale skeletons. Andre, do you have an announcement? Sign sheet going around? Okay. And we held another conference in November 2010. And this time we had 2 days with 13 speakers. One of them was a young man named Michael Triani. And Michael is a longtime friend. He's a fishery scientist and a resource manager. And we would say he got hooked on our group. And he has spoken for our group ever since and now heads APASEEM as the president. Mike left at one of the recent science conferences that he's helped chair. 2011 was an extremely important year for our group. First of all, this time Jennifer McKinnon is back, but this time she's got her PhD. And she's now talking about a different topic, Saipan Underwater Historical Trail. And she organized the community divers of Saipan to go out and help identify locations and did research on the various underwater archaeological aspects of our island. And there's Jennifer. And then we finally got our 501c3 letter. And on the left we have Ken Kramer, on the right Andre, and at the very bottom we have Kimberly Valancourt, who is right there in the corner. Then Steve McKagan and Steve Johnson talked us into doing something in which we sponsored some funds and held a training session for a community program called Coral Watch, and it was held at the Hyatt Regency. It was a lot of fun, and we learned how to identify how to check the health of coral reefs carefully as a community. We had a whale stranding event occur in August 2011. This time it was a stranding event here on the island of Saipan. 2 animals came ashore, and we ended up doing a pretty comprehensive and very model necropsy response. We had Dr. Christy West from Hawaii Pacific University come to help lead the effort, along with David Schofield, our old friend. And they gave a public talk to a standing room only crowd here after that whale stranding. We tend to have a lot of people come in whenever we talk about whales. APASEEM applied for a federal grant to manage a contract in which we were going to turn raw footage into a videotape on the Marianas Trench Marine National Monument. Then we had Dr. James Quick come and talk to us about geoenergy resources here on Saipan. Dr. Quick at that time was just a recently retired administrator for the U.S. Geological Survey. He's now the head of academics at SMU. He talked about how our island has geothermal activities. The reason he was called is when he was the director for USGS, our governor called him in response to one of our northern islands erupting. And the conference ended in 11th. In March 2012, 3 Western Pacific Fisheries Management Council scientists and resource managers came to talk to our island about what's called annual catch limits. And right now, there is a Westpac meeting going on here on Saipan as well. In 2012, April, we had the first of 3 years events in which we worked here at American Memorial Park, this time not in the auditorium though, but in the outside amphitheater, in which we worked with a college student organization called NRO, in which we displayed the skeletons that we had. And so out on the stage at American Memorial Park was our 30-foot skeleton of our baleen whale. Erin Olson, who won a presidential award for her work with her team dealing with dolphins, did a talk on islands' visual and acoustic surveys here of marine mammals and how to identify them. Also, there was tracking done about where the animals migrated to around the islands of Saipan, Tinian, Rota, Guam. And then we had a conference, and this time we had 3 days, 18 speakers in November. Then we showed the videotape that we finally got finished. Mr. Brian Jones hosted one of our volunteers and answered questions in February. In March, we had another special activity going on with Dr. Russell Benford and Dr. Nichelle Meneses from Northern Arizona University, where 12 students had been on Saipan for a 3-month period and gave presentations from several different types of topics that they had individually chosen for their research efforts. And here are 3 of them. And we had the expo again in April 22nd, Earth Day every year, so we knew that was coming up, and we again got the Enroe Club organized, and they helped us to move the skeleton out for display. We had a special topic on avifauna conservation, dealing with zoo-kept animals and how there's some efforts to try to translocate birds from our southern islands to our northern islands in order to help protect them against the brown tree snake. And then we had Dr. Angel Yagihara from the University of Hawaii talking about the science of the sting and her research on envenomation protection. There's Angel and there's a little jellyfish up there. She works with the box jellyfish, the most poisonous animals in the ocean. Most deadly. Aaron Olson came back to give us an update in July about the work that they were doing and the dolphin research that they were conducting. Dr. Renee Decker gave us a talk on megapode research. Particularly our animal lives in our islands. It's also called the incubator bird. Lives on Saipan and some other tropical islands. It also lives on our northern islands too. We had a conference, again 3 days, 18 speakers, and we developed a proposal. The proposal went to the Marianas Visitor Authority Destination Enhancement Grant Program, and we haven't heard back from that yet. We've been waiting for a year on the question about whether or not we can actually articulate and permanently mount the skeletons that we have. That's our goal. Following that conference, we had another group meeting, and we got to meet another young man named John Furey, who has volunteered his efforts for developing our website, along with the help of Mr. Ron Smith, and he has agreed to become our group's webmaster. So all the things that you're seeing on our website is John Furey's and our work, our help. 2014, another very active year. David Summerall talked here about the National Park Service Client Monitoring Research Program. Out here at American Memorial Park, there's a climate research station built similar to other stations all around the United States at National Park Service sites. One of our, again, well-attended talks. Expo again, whale skeleton on display for the very last time, because we hope that now we're not going to put it back in its box. We're going to put it up where it should go, some permanent place we're still working on. And then we had a couple of NOAA cruises. The first was a Mara Ramp cruise, and Dr. Bernardo Vargas led a talk on what they do for part of their cruise. And there's two different vessels, but I always mix them up, so I use the same picture for both talks. So the Oscar City and the Mara Ramp group were visiting our northern islands and doing different types of research. I think one's fisheries and one's more coral-based, I think. And then we had Chip Gard from the National Weather Service give us a talk on El Nino predictions. We changed venues. We couldn't use the park for some reason at that time, so we went to the multi-purpose center and did the talk there. And then the Oscar City cruise took place in July. And CNMI Fish and Wildlife, Bureau of Environmental Quality, and the college and others were also all part of that team, and they all did presentations here. And this is the annual conference today. First day, November 14th. We have 4 days this time, 23 speakers. We now have a website. The website is very active. Those are statistics from the website. Those are the same statistics drawn in a different kind of way. But one thing it does show you, if I can get the pointer to work, is this little column right in here shows, on average, 60 visits to our website every single day for the past year, on average. What's next? So hopefully a skeleton somewhere this way.